The thunder woke me before the clock struck 12. I thought it was just another power flicker, the kind that made the kitchen lights hum and die for a second before sputtering back to life. But this time, the silence stayed longer. The whole house seemed to hold its breath. I slipped out of bed half asleep, reaching for the flashlight on my nightstand. The carpet was cold under my feet. David wasn't beside me. His pillow was warm. That detail didn't register right away, but it would later. Down the hallway, the air felt charged static, clinging to my skin. Somewhere beneath the floorboards, a faint clicking sound pulsed steady and rhythmic. At first, I thought it was the old fuse box again. But then I saw it, a faint red glow leaking from the basement door. I hesitated at the top of the stairs, the flashlight trembling in my hand. That red light blinked in intervals like a heartbeat. The wind moaned through the trees outside, rain slashing against the windows. Every instinct told me to go back to bed. Instead, I descended one step at a time. The basement smelled of damp concrete and laundry detergent. The air was thick, unmoving. I swept the flashlight across the shelves, old boxes, paint cans, holiday decorations. Then I saw it wedged between the water heater and the fuse box, a small black recorder, its red light blinking like it had been waiting for me. I crouched and pressed play. My own voice filled the room. "I can't trust anyone anymore," it said, shaky and exhausted. I froze. The recording stuttered, then continued. "Not even David." My throat tightened. I didn't remember saying those words. I listened harder, feeling my pulse in my neck. There was a short pause, and then David's voice, calm, deliberate, almost clinical. "You see, she's unraveling." I stopped breathing. The flashlight trembled against the wall. I hit pause, then play again. The same words repeated, spliced together too neatly to be natural. My voice, then his, forming a narrative. One where I was losing my mind. I whispered, "What is this behind me?" A floorboard creaked. When I turned, David was standing at the top of the stairs. No flashlight, no alarm. Just him, calm, steady, watching. He didn't speak right away. His face was unreadable, only half lit by the lightning outside. "Elaine," he said. Finally, his voice level. "What are you doing down there?" I tried to hide the recorder behind me, but he'd already seen it. "Is this yours?" I asked, trying to sound steady. He descended slowly, one hand on the railing. "I've been keeping track of our conversations. You forget things lately. You repeat yourself." "That's not true," I whispered. He smiled, almost pitying. "You said that yesterday, too." Something in his tone sent a chill through me deeper than the cold basement air. He was calm because he'd already written the script. Every reaction I gave was another line in his version of the story. "I didn't say those things," I said, pointing at the recorder. He tilted his head like a parent indulging a confused child. "Elaine, you've been under a lot of stress. Marion leaving the firm, Lydia moving back home. You're tired. Sometimes people hear things that aren't really there." I just heard my voice. "Yes," he said gently. "But you know how memory works when someone's anxious." He stepped closer. I stepped back, hitting the cold wall. The storm outside cracked open light, flooding the small space for a split second. His face looked different, in that flash, harder, distant. He took the recorder from my hand with practiced ease, like he'd done this before. "You shouldn't be down here," he said, pocketing it. "It's not safe when the power's out. Go back upstairs. I'm not crazy." "I didn't say you were," he replied, and that smile came again, soft, knowing, rehearsed. I moved past him, brushing his shoulder. I felt him watching me climb each step. By the time I reached the hallway, my heart was pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. In the bedroom, his pillow was still warm. His phone charger was gone. He'd been awake long before the thunder. I stood there staring at the rain streaking the window, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator restarting as power flickered back. Somewhere below in the darkness, that small red light blinked again. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe my mind filled in the flash because I needed to see it one more time to remind myself it was real. I closed the door and locked it just once, Not twice like David always did. My fingers were shaking. I sat on the edge of the bed and whispered to the dark, "You're not losing your mind." But the silence after those words didn't sound like comfort. It sounded like a warning. I lay awake until the rain stopped, waiting for dawn, waiting for the sound of his footsteps on the stairs. Morning came dressed like nothing had happened. Sunlight fell across the kitchen table. The smell of coffee and toast filled the air, and David hummed softly, as if the storm had been a dream. He greeted me with the same warmth he'd worn for years, but his eyes flicked toward mine for a split second too long. It was the kind of glance that asks a question without saying a word. "Do you still remember?" I sat down opposite him, trying to steady my breathing. "Did the power come back right after the storm?" I asked. He looked up casual. "What storm?" That was the first lie of the day. He poured coffee for both of us, the steam curling between us like a curtain. "You must have had a bad dream," he said, stirring sugar into his cup. "You've been talking in your sleep again." I wanted to scream, but instead I smiled. Maybe I said softly. My mind replayed the night in flashes, the red light, my voice, his footsteps. He'd taken the recorder, but not before I memorized every detail. When he left for work, I waited until I heard the garage door close. Then I moved. The basement felt different in daylight, emptier, less haunted. But the corner near the fuse box still smelled faintly of metal and dust. I searched the shelves, the laundry basket, the old toolbox. Behind a stack of Christmas boxes, I found another black recorder, this one coated in lint. The label read April 12th. I pressed play. I don't remember what I said. My voice trembled. Then David's voice, calm and paternal. "It's okay, honey. That's why we're keeping notes." The next clip was dated April 18th. My voice again, but different, cut in half sentences, spliced words rearranged. "Feel trapped. Sometimes I hear." The edits were rough, like someone learning to manipulate audio. I realized there wasn't one recorder. There were dozens, each labeled with a date, some stretching back months. I sat on the floor surrounded by them and felt my breath catch. It wasn't random surveillance. It was a project. A slow, deliberate rewriting of who I was. The basement door creaked above me. I froze. Elaine, David called. His tone was light, almost cheerful. "You left your phone upstairs." "I'll be up in a second," I said, trying to sound casual. He stepped down one stair. "You sure you're okay?" "You look pale today." I said, "I'm fine." He hesitated, then his shoes retreated. Footsteps fading into the hum of the refrigerator. I exhaled, counting silently to 10 before moving again. My hands were shaking, but I gathered 2 recorders, tucked them into a Ziploc bag, and hid them under the sink behind the cleaning supplies. By afternoon, Lydia came home from her shift. She barely looked at me, scrolling her phone as she leaned against the counter. "Your dad said you weren't feeling well," she murmured. "I'm fine," I replied, "just tired." She nodded, but something in her eyes flickered guilt or pity. I couldn't tell. That evening, David suggested we watch a movie. He dimmed the lights, opened a bottle of wine. Everything about him looked ordinary, comforting even. But when he laughed at the screen, I saw his reflection in the window behind the TV. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Halfway through the movie, he paused it and turned to me. "You've been quiet," he said gently. "Just thinking," I replied. About last night, I said nothing. He reached over, touched my hand. "You really scared me. You were in the basement talking to yourself again. You kept saying I was watching you. Do you remember that?" He was rewriting it in real time, laying the groundwork for his version. "I think you dreamed that," I said. He smiled, soft and practiced. "That's what the doctor thought too." The doctor. He took a slow sip of wine. "I called Dr. Reynolds this morning. He said to keep an eye on you. Nothing serious, just observation." I stared at him. Every word sounded like care until I realized it was a diagnosis. Later that night, when he went upstairs, I sat alone in the dark living room. Outside, the world was calm again, but inside my head, the storm hadn't ended. I opened my notes app and typed the date, the words he'd used, the exact phrases. "You scared me. You were talking to yourself." The doctor said observation. Every sentence felt like a brick in the wall he was building around me. And I had just started to dig a way out. The next morning, I drove without knowing exactly where I was going. The steering wheel felt heavy, my hands slick against the leather. I didn't take the highway. I followed side roads lined with bare trees until I saw a small strip mall and the glowing sign that said Holt Legal Services. Marion's name was still on the door in neat white letters. She looked surprised when I walked in. Elaine. Her voice carried that soft blend of concern and formality that comes from years of friendship bruised by distance. I need to talk, I said. She led me to the small conference room, poured coffee, closed the door. The sound of it latching behind me felt like a seal. I told her everything: the storm, the recorder, the fake conversations, the mention of a doctor. I tried to keep my tone calm, but the tremor in my voice betrayed me. Marion listened without interrupting pen, tapping softly against her notepad. When I finally stopped, the silence felt thick enough to swallow the room. "You're saying he's been recording you for months," she said slowly, "and editing your voice to make it sound like you're unstable." "Yes." She took a breath. "Elaine, I've seen cases like this. They start small documentation, medical notes, witnesses who can testify about erratic behavior. It's the groundwork for conservatorship." I frowned. "That's when someone petitions the court to take over your personal and financial decisions?" She finished gently. "Usually for people who are mentally unfit or elderly. He's building a file." The words hit harder than any thunderclap. "He can't do that. If he has enough evidence and a doctor to back it up, he can try." I pressed my palms to my eyes. "He's already changing things. Bank accounts, maybe insurance. He told me a doctor will observe me." Marion leaned forward. "Then you need to protect yourself quietly. Don't confront him again. Don't mention this conversation. Start recording everything. Every call, every text. Keep a journal in your own handwriting with timestamps." Her tone shifted from friend to strategist. "I'll look into any documents filed under his name in the last 3 months. If he's spoken to a lawyer, there'll be a paper trail." I nodded, dizzy from relief and terror. When I left, the parking lot smelled of wet asphalt and exhaust. I sat in the car for a long time before starting the engine. In the rearview mirror, my reflection looked older, unfamiliar. By the time I got home, David's car was already in the driveway. My stomach dropped. He met me at the door, smiling. "You were out early," he said. "I needed to clear my head," I replied. "Good. Dr. Reynolds called. He'd like to stop by later this week, just to make sure you're sleeping better." I swallowed. "You already spoke to him?" He nodded. "Of course. We're both worried about you. The plural were cut through me." He meant Lydia, too. At dinner, Lydia barely spoke. When she did, her voice was small. "Dad said you were having trouble remembering things." I set my fork down. "Did he?" She looked up, eyes shining with something that wasn't quite fear, but close. "I just want you to be okay, Mom. I am okay." David reached over and squeezed my hand. "We all want that." His grip lingered too long. That night, I took Marion's advice. I downloaded a recording app and placed my phone on the nightstand, the microphone aimed at the door. My heart pounded as I whispered the date and time. "This is Elaine Marks. Tuesday, 8:47 p.m. I am recording this because I no longer trust what's real." The light from the hallway slipped under the door, and I thought of Marion's last words. "Don't let him know, you know." I turned off the lamp and lay still. The house creaked, the refrigerator hummed, and somewhere above me a quiet footstep crossed the hallway. When I closed my eyes, I imagined the click of another recorder starting somewhere in the dark. Lydia came home early that evening, her footsteps soft on the hallway carpet. I was at the sink washing dishes, pretending to be absorbed in the rhythm of warm water and glass. The house was too quiet. Even the hum of the refrigerator felt cautious. "Mom," she said. Her voice was hesitant, like she'd rehearsed it in her head before stepping into the kitchen. I turned. Hi, honey. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, phone in hand. Her hair was pulled into a loose bun, and the dark circles under her eyes made her look older than 24. Dad said you've been having some bad nights. I dried my hands on the towel slowly. Is that what he told you? She looked down. He's worried. We both are. The word both landed hard. And what exactly are you worried about? She hesitated, choosing each word like it could explode. You forget things sometimes. You get upset and don't remember why. I mean, you were in the basement last night talking to yourself. I froze. You saw that Dad told me, she said quickly. He said you were scared of him, that you thought he was recording you. Mom? That's not true, right? I took a breath. My first instinct was to defend myself, to lay everything out, the recorders, the files, Marion's warning. But Marion's voice echoed in my head. Don't let him know you know. So I said carefully, do I seem unstable to you? Her eyes flicked toward the floor. I don't know. You're different lately. Different. That word hurt more than crazy. I took a step closer. Lydia, has your father ever shown you anything? Papers, recordings, messages about me? Her expression tightened. He said it's private. Between him and the doctor. What doctor? Dr. Reynolds. He said it's just a precaution. He doesn't want to lose you, Mom. He's trying to help. Help? I laughed quietly, but it sounded strange, brittle. He's trying to help himself. Lydia's face flushed. That's not fair. You always think people are against you. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. The same cadence, the same tone David used when he corrected me at dinner, calm and reasonable, perfectly rehearsed. I realized he'd been feeding her lines, teaching her how to talk to me. I'm sorry, I said softly. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. She exhaled, relieved. It's okay. Dad's been under a lot of stress, and when you get upset, it scares him. It scares me, too. I nodded, pretending to understand. You should get some rest, I said. You've got work early tomorrow. After she went upstairs, I stayed in the kitchen for a long time. The clock ticked too loudly. I could still hear her words looping in my mind. You always think people are against you. I took my phone from my pocket and pressed record. My voice came out thin, trembling. Day 4. Lydia is repeating David's phrases. Possible coaching. She doesn't know she's part of it. Then I whispered the truth I couldn't say out loud. He's using her voice too. Later in bed, I heard their murmurs through the wall. David's low tone steady and instructive. Lydia's softer, uncertain. She seemed fine, she whispered. She hides it well, David replied. That's why we have to stay calm. You think she knows? No. But if she finds anything else, we'll need to call Reynolds sooner. I covered my mouth with my hand to keep from making a sound. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I forced myself to listen. A chair creaked. Footsteps moved toward the door, then stopped. Silence. When I finally dared to look, their light under the door went out. I waited until the house settled again before reaching for my phone and saving the new recording. At 2 in the morning, I texted Marion. He's using Lydia now. Her reply came almost instantly. Keep recording everything. Don't confront them. Not yet. I lay there staring at the ceiling, realizing the line between love and betrayal had already dissolved. My daughter wasn't my ally anymore. She was his witness. The next morning began with an apology that didn't feel like one. David left a note on the kitchen counter, written in his neat, careful handwriting. We all said things we didn't mean last night. Let's try to have a calm day. Beneath his signature was a small, smiley face. It looked ridiculous sitting beside my coffee mug. Lydia had already gone to work. The house was quiet again. Quiet in that artificial way, like sound had been deliberately removed. I moved through the rooms on autopilot, opening curtains, straightening cushions, pretending to live a normal morning. But I was waiting for a reason to confirm that my fear wasn't madness. David's laptop sat open in his study, the blue glow of the screen visible through the half-closed door. He must have forgotten to log out. I hesitated, heart pounding. Then I stepped inside. The desk smelled faintly of cedar polish. A file directory filled the screen, financial statements, work reports, and a folder labeled Evidence. My hand hovered over the mouse. I double-clicked. There were videos, dozens of them. Each file named with a date, each about a few minutes long. I clicked the first one, March 5.mp4. The footage was grainy, recorded from a small camera perched somewhere in the corner of our bedroom. The image showed me pacing, holding my head, muttering something under my breath. Then a voice, David's, came from off-screen. "Elaine, what are you doing?" My recorded self looked startled, then the clip cut abruptly to black. I played the next file. Same angle, same setup. But this time the audio had been altered. My voice overlapped itself, as if I were arguing with someone who wasn't there. Sentences were rearranged, tone distorted. The edits were crude, but convincing. He wasn't just recording me, he was producing me. A chill swept through me as I scrolled further. Toward the bottom was a file titled Final. I opened it, and my own face filled the screen, eyes red, whispering incoherently. But in the reflection of the bedroom mirror behind me, I saw something he had missed. David holding a camera, smiling faintly as I cried. I pressed pause. My hands shook so badly that the mouse slipped. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The hum of the air conditioner grew into a roar. I wanted to smash the computer, but Marion's voice echoed again. "Collect, don't destroy." I plugged a flash drive into the port and began copying the folder. The progress bar crawled forward, 5%, 11%, 24%. Every second felt like a gun cocking. Halfway through, the front door clicked open. Elaine, David called. I froze. My heart raced so loud it drowned the ticking clock on the wall. I minimized the window and forced myself to stand. "In here?" I called back, voice too bright. He appeared at the doorway, smiling as if nothing in the world were wrong. "You're up early. Couldn't sleep?" "Just tidying." He nodded, glancing toward the desk. "My computer didn't give you any trouble, did it? It's been freezing lately." My throat went dry. "No, I didn't touch it." "Good," he said. "There's sensitive work stuff on there." He stepped closer, brushing imaginary dust from my shoulder. "You seem tense." "I'm fine. Dr. Reynolds said he can stop by tomorrow. I know you hate the idea, but he just wants to help." I smiled the way I used to when Lydia was little and needed reassurance. "If you think it'll make you feel better." He studied me for a second too long. "It's for both of us." After he left for work again, I retrieved the flash drive and finished copying the folder. When the progress bar hit 100%, I hid the drive inside the pocket of an old winter coat in the hallway closet. That night, I called Marion from the bathroom with the water running to muffle the sound. "I found the videos," I whispered. "He's editing everything." She didn't sound surprised. "Get them out of the house. Bring them to me tomorrow morning. And Elaine, don't let him see you afraid. That's how he'll win." I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My face looked pale and hollow, my eyes older. The woman staring back wasn't frightened anymore. She was furious. When I turned off the light, the mirror still held a faint outline of my face. It was the first time I'd noticed that reflection could lie too. Dr. Reynolds arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, dressed in an immaculate gray suit that made him look more like a banker than a doctor. His smile was wide, polite, practiced the kind that never reached the eyes. David stood beside him, one hand resting on the back of the sofa, the other tucked casually into his pocket. I could feel the air between them. They'd rehearsed this visit. "Elaine, David said you remember Dr. Reynolds." I didn't, but I nodded. The doctor extended his hand. "Good to see you again. How have you been sleeping?" That question, simple, harmless, felt like a test. I met his gaze. "Better lately." "Thank you." He smiled, scribbling something in a small notebook. "Good, good. Any mood swings, memory gaps?" "Only when people ask me strange questions." David gave a quiet chuckle, the kind meant to diffuse tension. She has a sense of humor, he said. I wanted to ask him if this was part of the act, if the laughter made his notes sound more convincing. Dr. Reynolds looked around the living room. His gaze lingered on the photos lining the mantel. Family vacations, birthdays, Lydia's graduation. He asked gentle questions about my routine, my appetite, my relationship with my family. I answered each one with deliberate calm. Every word I spoke felt like walking a tightrope. Do you ever feel unsafe here? He asked finally. David's eyes flicked toward me. I smiled. No, of course not. He nodded, jotting something else. Then, do you ever think people are trying to control you? My chest tightened. The air seemed to vanish from the room. I forced my face into neutrality. I think people worry too much about things they don't understand. David shifted slightly, but he didn't interrupt. The doctor clicked his pen. I'll write that you're stable, but we should keep monitoring stress triggers. It's best to have a family member track daily moods. A simple log should suffice. David nodded approvingly. I've been doing that already. That word already wasn't for me. It was for him. Proof. They talked quietly while I fetched water, but I could still hear them. She hides it well, David murmured. That's common, Dr. Reynolds replied. Especially if there's underlying paranoia. Keep documenting video if possible. Courts prefer visual evidence. My hands shook so badly the glasses clinked against the counter. When I returned, they both smiled like nothing had been said. Dr. Reynolds drank his water, complimented the decor, and said he'd stop by again sometime soon. As he shook my hand at the door, he added softly, Try to rest. You're safe here. Safe. The word burned. When the door finally closed, I turned to David. You invited him without asking me. He shrugged. I'm worried. He's helping. Helping who? His smile thinned. Don't start again. I opened my mouth, then stopped. There was no winning a conversation built on rewritten truths. After he went upstairs to make a call, I checked the kitchen cabinet. My prescription bottles were lined up neatly on the second shelf, but the labels looked different. The dosage had changed. My name, the doctor's name, even the pharmacy logo reprinted, retaped off by a shade. He'd replaced them. I stared at the small white pills and felt my stomach turn. I couldn't know what was in them anymore. That night I didn't take any. I emptied one into a napkin and flushed it down the sink. Later, as the house went silent, I recorded another entry. Day 6. Dr. Reynolds' visit confirmed. They're coordinating. Medication tampered. Must preserve samples for evidence. I whispered those words like a prayer. Then I turned off the light and listened. Footsteps moved upstairs, slow, measured, deliberate. A door opened, then closed. In the darkness, I thought of Marian's face, calm and serious. Her pen tapping the table as she said, You need to protect yourself quietly. She was right. They were building their case, and now I was building mine. The phone rang just after noon. I nearly dropped a plate when I saw Marian's name on the screen. I hadn't heard from her in 3 days, long enough for silence to start feeling like abandonment. I answered on the second ring. Marian. Her voice was low, urgent. Elaine, listen carefully. I looked into your accounts. My heart slammed against my ribs. What did you find? There's been movement. David transferred most of your joint savings into a new account under his name. He also filed a request to update the property deed, removing you as co-owner. The room swayed around me. He can't. He's setting up the legal framework? She interrupted. If he convinces a judge you're mentally unfit, it all becomes irreversible. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The refrigerator hum felt like a roar. Elaine, she continued, you need to get proof of what he's doing before he locks you out of everything. Keep your evidence safe off-site, and start recording him directly. I looked toward the staircase. He'll notice. Then make it natural. Record your conversations on your phone. Keep calm, no matter what he says. His control depends on your reaction. I gripped the counter, staring at the phone cord, twisting around my fingers. He's not going to stop, is he? No, Marian said softly. But neither are you. After the call ended, I sat in the kitchen motionless. The house felt too small, like the walls were listening. I opened my notes app again and started a new entry. Day 7. Marion confirmed financial isolation. Transfers and deed update underway. Begin counter documentation. The next few days blurred together. I recorded everything: conversations, footsteps, even silence. I learned to talk like nothing was wrong. When David asked if I'd remembered to pay the electric bill, I answered lightly, "Of course," but my phone sitting on the table captured every tone, every pause. Sometimes I replayed the recordings at night, cataloging his phrases. "You forget things. You were shouting again. It's for your own good. Always calm. Always identical." He was performing a version of me that only existed in his narrative. Lydia noticed my quietness. "Mom, you're being weird again." "I'm just tired." "Dad said you should rest more." "Of course he did." I smiled, but inside a cold rage pulsed, steady and silent. That evening, as David worked in his study, I crept upstairs to the bedroom. The flash drive from the evidence folder still hid inside the coat pocket. I wrapped it in an envelope labeled laundry receipts and slipped it into my purse. When I came back down, David was standing at the bottom of the stairs. "Going somewhere?" I forced a laugh. "Just groceries." He studied me for a long moment. "You haven't been yourself lately." "I think I'm finally feeling better," I said. He smiled faintly, but his eyes didn't move. "You always say that right before something happens." The sentence chilled me. Right before something happens. I didn't respond. I just brushed past him, my pulse hammering in my throat. Outside, the air felt too thin, too bright. I sat in the car and texted Marion. "I have the files. He's moving everything. Meet tomorrow." Her reply came seconds later. "Morning. My office. Don't be late." When I came home an hour later, David was sitting at the table with Lydia. The two of them stopped talking when I entered. "What's wrong?" I asked. David smiled. "We're just planning your birthday. It's 6 weeks away." He chuckled. "Never too early to plan." I sat down slowly, watching Lydia's nervous smile. Her fingers twisted the edge of her napkin until it tore. That night, I made another recording. My voice was flat, detached. "He's isolating me financially. He's building witnesses. Tomorrow I bring proof to Marion." I stared at the phone after pressing stop. My reflection in the screen looked like someone halfway between fear and defiance. For the first time, I felt something close to power. Not safety, but control over my own truth. The invitation came as a surprise. David left the envelope on the kitchen table, sealed with a note in his crisp handwriting. "Dinner with the neighbors Friday at 7. A little normalcy will be good for you." Normalcy. The word felt foreign in my mouth when I read it aloud. I almost tore the invitation in half, but I didn't. Marion's warning still echoed in my mind. "Don't let him see you afraid." So I smiled when he brought it up that evening, nodding as if I couldn't wait to play hostess again. "Great idea," I said. "It's been too long since we've had company." He studied me for a moment, maybe thrown by my enthusiasm. "I thought so too," he said finally. "People have been asking about you." "Really?" He nodded, smiling. "They've noticed you've been quiet." He didn't say the word unstable, but it hung there unspoken. Friday came too quickly. I spent the day cooking dishes he suggested: roast chicken, garlic potatoes, lemon tart, food that smelled like safety, like a life that no longer existed. Lydia helped set the table, placing the silverware with robotic precision. By 7, the house gleamed. 2 couples arrived: our neighbors Tom and Marla from next door, and the Kleins from across the street. All 4 greeted me with the kind of warmth reserved for funerals. David poured wine, charmed the room effortlessly. He told stories, laughed at himself, complimented everyone's outfits. I played along, my face a careful mask. But beneath the laughter, I saw the undercurrent, the small glances between him and the guests, the knowing nods. Halfway through dinner, he leaned forward and said, "Elaine's been under a lot of stress lately." "We've all been worried, haven't we, sweetheart?" My fork paused midair. The table went quiet. I smiled. I didn't realize I'd become a community project. A few nervous chuckles. He kept going, voice warm but deliberate. She's been having trouble sleeping. Sometimes she forgets conversations we've had. But we're working on it with Dr. Reynolds. I could feel the ground tilting beneath me. Every word was measured concern disguised as love manipulation, masquerading as care. "Isn't that right, Elaine?" he asked. I met his eyes calm. "I remember everything that matters." Tom cleared his throat. "That's good," he said weakly. David chuckled. "Of course. She's strong. We just worry." He raised his glass and everyone followed suit. The toast felt like a ritual, a silent agreement to his version of the story. I took a sip of wine and caught Lydia watching me, her face pale, conflicted. She knew this wasn't just dinner. This was rehearsal. He was building witnesses. When dessert came, David told a story about the time I'd locked myself out of the car and called the police instead of AA. It wasn't true, but he told it like it was humorous, endearing, slightly sad. The table laughed. "Do you remember that, Elaine?" he asked. I smiled. "I do. But in my version you lost the keys." The laughter faltered for a moment before he recovered. After dinner, as everyone stood to leave, Marla touched my arm gently. "You take care of yourself, dear. We're all here if you need anything." I wanted to ask what she meant, if she saw it, if she believed it, but I just nodded. When the guests were gone and the dishes stacked in the sink, David poured himself another glass of wine. "That went well," he said. "Did it?" He looked at me, eyes glinting. "You managed to hold it together. I'm proud of you." The words hit like a slap. "Hold it together," I repeated quietly. "You make it sound like I'm about to fall apart." He smiled. "Aren't you?" He turned and walked upstairs, leaving me in the glow of the dining room chandelier. I stayed there staring at the empty chairs, the wine stains on the tablecloth, the remnants of the performance. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The recording app still blinked red. Every word, every tone, every laugh, it was all there. I saved the file, labeling it "Dinner Trap." Later, alone in bed, I whispered into the dark day 9. Public humiliation as narrative reinforcement. Guests manipulated as witnesses. Recorded everything. I closed my eyes, heart still pounding, and realized the truth Marion had warned me of. David wasn't trying to convince me I was insane anymore. He was convincing everyone else. The morning after the dinner felt unreal, too bright, too quiet. The smell of last night's roast still lingered, a ghost of normalcy clinging to the air. I stood in the kitchen staring at the wine glasses drying on the rack, wondering how many of them had believed him, how many thought I really was losing my mind. David left early, cheerful as always. "You handled yourself beautifully," he said, before kissing my forehead. "See, everyone saw how calm you were. They'll sleep better now. They'll sleep better now." The words echoed like a taunt. When the door shut, I leaned against the counter, trembling. I had recorded the dinner, but I needed more, something irrefutable. I remembered the other recorders he'd hidden, the ones I hadn't found. If he'd planted them in the basement, there had to be more somewhere. I began searching. The bedroom drawers, behind picture frames, inside coat pockets. Every space felt foreign, like someone else's home. Then, while lifting the mattress, something small rolled toward the headboard, a key, thin and tarnished, taped beneath the wooden slat. My breath caught. I knew immediately what it was for. The basement door creaked when I opened it. Dust drifted in the sunlight, slanting down the stairs. The air smelled like rust and detergent, again familiar, menacing. I took each step slowly, one hand gripping the rail. The lock beneath the fuse box, the one I'd never been able to open, waited at the far wall. The key slid in easily. Inside was a small metal lockbox. I lifted it out, heart hammering. Inside were more recorders, at least 10 of them labeled with dates, a flash drive, and a small notebook in David's handwriting. Subject EM. Behavioral log. I flipped it open. Each page was a day, each line an accusation. 5:03. Paranoia episode accused me of lying about medication. 5:04. Hostile during conversation, possible delusion, believes being watched. 5:05. Late night pacing, verbalized distrust of daughter. My stomach turned. He'd cataloged me like a patient. Then I saw an entry from the previous week, 7:14, coordinated discussion with Lydia. Reinforce message of concern, maintain calm tone to avoid escalation. Good response. I read the line 3 times before the meaning sank in. Coordinated. He hadn't just coached her, they were rehearsing. I sank onto the cold floor, clutching the notebook. My hands shook as I pressed play on one of the recorders. Lydia's voice filled the room, soft, uncertain. Dad, what if she hears me? She won't. David said, calm as ever. Just stay calm if she lashes out. You're helping her heal. Are we lying to her? He paused. We're protecting her from herself. The sound of his voice, gentle, certain, shattered something inside me. I stopped the tape tears burning behind my eyes. There were no more illusions left. No misunderstood intentions. No lingering hope that this could still be love. He had turned my daughter into his instrument. I sat there until the light shifted on the concrete floor, until my legs went numb. Then I gathered everything. The notebook, the flash drive, the recorders, and placed them in a small duffel bag. My proof. As I turned to go, something caught my eye. A small red light under the steps, faint but blinking. Another recorder still running. I knelt, lifted it, and pressed stop. The last line captured was my own voice whispering through tears. He's using her voice too. The irony almost made me laugh. When I climbed the stairs, Lydia was standing at the top, her expression caught between guilt and fear. Mom, she said softly, what are you doing? I held the duffel close. Cleaning. Her eyes flicked toward the bag. Dad said not to go down there. Did he? I asked. And what did he tell you I'd find? She swallowed, looking away. He just wants to help you. I stepped closer, my voice shaking but steady. He's not helping me, Lydia. He's rewriting me. And you're letting him. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know what to believe anymore. I know, I whispered. That's exactly what he wanted. For a second, I thought she might reach for me. But she didn't. She turned and walked down the hall, closing her door softly behind her. I stood there alone, clutching the duffel bag, realizing that love, real love, was gone. All that was left was proof. By Thursday morning, the decision was already made, though I hadn't said it out loud. Once you understand someone is trying to erase you, there's nothing left to negotiate. You stop explaining yourself. You start planning your exit. I called Marion from the car while parked in front of a hardware store. I have everything, I said quietly. Recordings, logs, even a notebook in his handwriting. She didn't waste a second. Bring it to me today. I'll have someone scan and timestamp everything. If he's already filing for guardianship, we need a counter record. Already filing, I repeated. She hesitated. Elaine. I checked court dockets this morning. There's a preliminary petition in your county filed 2 days ago by David Marks requesting emergency guardianship for spousal mental instability. It hasn't been processed yet, but it's there. The words hollowed me out. So that's it. No, she said firmly. That's where we start fighting back. I gripped the steering wheel until my fingers went white. He's going to say I'm paranoid. Then don't argue, she said. Show proof. Bring everything, but don't go home first. If you have to, I'll send someone to get the rest. I thought about the basement, the blinking red lights, the house that felt less like home and more like a set. I thought about Lydia's silence, about the way David's voice turned soft, only when it meant danger. No, I said finally. I need one more thing. What? Something that shows intent. I drove home before I could lose courage. The house was empty. I moved fast, adrenaline guiding me. I searched David's study again, drawers, folders behind framed certificates. Inside a manila envelope marked medical records, I found a printed email exchange. From David Marks to Dr. Alan Reynolds. Subject observation log. Update recommend. Proceeding with formal capacity evaluation by end of month. Her verbal coherence is deteriorating. Attached clips demonstrate disorganized thought. We may need to accelerate the filing if she resists medication. I printed the email, folded it into my purse, and left. By afternoon, I was in Marion's office. Her paralegal scanned every file, every recording, every note. She looked up after the last one. "Elaine, this is enough to stop him," she said. I wanted to believe her. When I left, the sky was already dimming. I drove aimlessly, not ready to face the house. My phone buzzed a message from David. "Where are you? Lydia's worried." I didn't reply. Another message followed. "Dr. Reynolds needs a quick check-in tonight. Don't make this harder." Harder. The word carried a threat hidden under its gentleness. I parked in a grocery lot and watched families load bags into trunks, ordinary lives moving forward while mine unraveled quietly. I called Marion again. "If I stay there tonight, he'll find the missing files. He'll know." "Then don't," she said simply. "Come here. I'll leave the office unlocked." But something in me resisted. "No, I'll go home. Pack first. Then I'll go." I hung up and drove back, headlights carving through fog. The air felt heavy, metallic. The house loomed dark except for the faint glow in the living room. Inside, David was sitting on the couch, calm as ever. "Where were you?" he asked. "Out," I said. He studied my face. "You look tired." "I am." He nodded, standing. "Then take your pills and rest. We'll talk in the morning." I forced a smile, went upstairs, and closed the bathroom door. My hands trembled as I opened the bottle. The pills clinked softly against porcelain. I turned on the faucet, pretending to swallow, while flushing them down the drain one by one. Downstairs, the creak of a floorboard. His pacing measured, waiting. When the house finally stilled, I packed. Just essentials: clothes, IDs, flash drive copy, Marion's contact card. I left the old recordings hidden behind the loose floorboard under my side of the bed, just in case. At midnight, I stood by the window watching rain begin to fall. Lightning flickered on the horizon, the same kind of storm as the first night. Maybe that was fitting. I whispered to myself, "I'm leaving." For the first time in weeks, the words didn't sound like madness. They sounded like survival. The rain began a few minutes before midnight, soft at first, just a whisper against the window glass, then heavier, building into the same restless storm that had started everything. Lightning painted the house in brief, cold flashes. I finished packing, zipping the duffel bag quietly. My heart kept time with the thunder. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like an alarm. I slipped my phone into my pocket, the recording app already running. The plan was simple: leave, drive to Marion's office, never look back. I crept down the stairs, shoes in hand. The house smelled faintly of rain and lemon cleaners, sterile and wrong. My reflection passed in the window, pale, determined, unrecognizable. When I reached the door, lightning flared, and in that flash, I saw him. David stood at the top of the stairs. He didn't speak right away, just watched. The shadows made his face unreadable. Going somewhere, I froze, keys clutched tight in my fist. "I couldn't sleep," I said. At midnight, his voice was calm, too calm. I thought I'd clear my head. He descended one step, then another. "You're scaring me again, Elaine." I took a slow breath. "You've been recording me." He sighed, almost regretful. "We've talked about this." "No," I said. "You've talked. I've listened." The lightning cracked again, illuminating his expression. Gentle concern twisted into control. He took another step. "You're sick, honey. You need help." "Then why did you replace my medication?" He didn't answer, just smiled faintly. A teacher indulging a difficult student. "You threw them away, didn't you? That's what this is. You can't tell what's real anymore." I backed toward the door. "I know exactly what's real." He reached out his hand, palm open. You're having an episode. Come upstairs. We'll call Reynolds in the morning. You already called him. His smile faltered. I pulled the folded email from my pocket and threw it at him. It fluttered down the stairs like a white flag that wasn't surrender. You told him I was deteriorating. You said you'd accelerate the filing. For the first time, his calm cracked. You shouldn't have gone through my files. You shouldn't have built a case to destroy me. The storm boomed above us, thunder rattling the windows. He took another step. Elaine, stop this. I lifted the duffel. I'm leaving. Where will you go? You have no access to our accounts. You can't even prove you're stable without me. I don't need to prove anything I said. Not anymore. He lunged, trying to grab the bag, but I stepped back, the strap, catching on the door handle. The motion yanked it open. Rain gusted in cold and loud, drenching us both. For a heartbeat, we just stood there, two strangers in the doorway of a life collapsing. Then I said the words I'd rehearsed in my head for days. I'm not crazy. I'm recorded. His face twisted, not anger, not shock, just the brief panic of losing control. Elaine. I threw the bag at him. Papers spilled out his notes. The flash drives, the proof of everything. Here, I said. Keep your evidence. You'll need it. He bent down instinctively to gather them, and I ran. Barefoot through the rain, the driveway slick beneath me. The air was cold electric. I reached the car, fumbling the keys with shaking hands. Behind me, I heard him shout my name, his voice sharp and desperate. Elaine, come back. You'll regret this. I turned the ignition. The headlights cut through the rain, illuminating him standing in the doorway, drenched and furious, papers plastered to his chest. Lightning flashed again, and for a split second his expression softened. Not as a husband, but as a man realizing his control was gone. I slammed the door, hit the gas, and didn't look back. The rain blurred everything, but I kept driving, one hand gripping the wheel, the other clutching the recorder in my pocket. It was still blinking red, still catching every breath, every sob, every whisper of the storm. Somewhere between one town and the next, I started repeating the same words to myself, over and over. You're not crazy. You're recorded. The storm swallowed my voice, but I said it anyway. Rain blurred the road into a silver river. The wipers beat furiously, useless against the downpour, but I kept driving, the headlights cutting narrow tunnels through the storm. My breath fogged the windshield. The air inside the car felt too small, too heavy, filled with the sound of my own heartbeat. The phone on the passenger seat blinked red, the recorder still running. I hadn't meant to keep it going, but maybe it was right that it stayed on. My own proof, my own voice, unedited. Tuesday, I whispered into the dark. Midnight, I'm leaving him. My words came out in gasps. The steering wheel trembled under my grip, every muscle in my arms taut. I kept my eyes on the broken yellow lines ahead, following them like lifelines. Somewhere behind me, the road twisted back toward the house. Every lightning flash felt like his headlights appearing in the mirror. I half expected to see him, David, wet and furious, driving after me, calling my name like he owned it. But the mirror stayed empty. Only the storm followed. I turned the radio on, hoping for distraction. Static. Then a burst of soft music, some forgotten piano piece that made my throat ache. I laughed once, a short, broken sound. The car heater hummed weakly. My soaked clothes clung cold against my skin. When the highway sign for Maple Hollow appeared, I exhaled for the first time in minutes. 10 more miles to Marion's office. 10 miles between who I'd been and whoever came next. My phone vibrated with a new message. David. Please come home. We can fix this. Then another. You're not safe out there. I'm worried. And another. Don't make me call the police. They'll believe me before they believe you. I turned the screen face down. You already called them, I muttered. Lightning flared again, illuminating the empty passenger seat beside me. For a heartbeat, I imagined Lydia sitting there, the way she used to after bad dreams. I pictured her face from last night, wet eyes, trembling lips, and wondered what she was thinking now. Did she believe him? Or did she finally see the monster hiding behind that calm, steady voice? The road narrowed into the forest, stretched a dark tunnel of trees, bending under the weight of rain. I slowed down the tires, hissing through puddles. The world felt stripped to its elements: water, wind, motion, fear. Then the engine coughed. My pulse spiked. No, no, no. I pressed the gas again. The car shuddered, protesting, then steadied. Come on, don't stop now, I whispered. I thought of all the voices he'd recorded, all the versions of me he'd invented: the sobbing wife, the paranoid woman, the fragile patient. None of them were real. This one was. The one gripping the wheel, driving through the storm, breathing, and refusing to disappear. I started talking louder to fill the silence. If anyone ever hears this, I said, my name is Elaine Marks. My husband David Marks has been recording me without consent. He's been editing my voice to make me sound insane. He filed for guardianship. I'm not sick. I'm scared. But I'm not sick. Thunder swallowed the last word. I felt tears spill hot down my cheeks, mixing with the rain that had found its way through the half-open window. The town lights appeared ahead, a dim halo of orange through the storm. Marion's office was 2 blocks past the courthouse. I could almost see it. Another message buzzed. Elaine, please. I love you. I laughed again, softer this time, almost pitying. Love doesn't sound like that, I whispered. As I turned onto the final street, the rain began to ease. The air smelled of wet asphalt and freedom. I parked outside Marion's building, engine idling. My hands shook as I stopped the recording. For a second I hesitated, listening to the sound of rain easing against the glass, to my own breathing settling into something human again. Then I pressed play. My own voice filled the car, trembling but clear. My name is Elaine Marks. I'm not sick. I'm scared. I smiled through tears. For the first time, the sound of my voice didn't make me flinch. It sounded alive. I turned off the engine. Lightning flashed one last time, illuminating the rain-slicked street. I stepped out, the air cold against my skin, and walked toward the office door. Each step felt heavier and lighter all at once. The storm was behind me. But I knew, even as I reached for the handle, that some storms never really end. Weeks later, the rain was only a memory. I still heard it sometimes, though, not outside, but in my mind, like the echo of a night that refused to fade. Marion's office looked different in daylight. No shadows, no fear. Just morning sun spilling across a stack of manila folders marked Evidence Marks versus Marks. The label made me shiver. It looked clinical, detached, like I was just another case. But I wasn't a case anymore. I was a person again. Marion sat across from me, glasses low on her nose, flipping through papers. The investigator finished his report, she said. It's airtight. He found metadata on the recording's timestamps proving they were altered. Dr. Reynolds' emails confirmed coordination. The court dismissed the guardianship petition. I exhaled, my body finally releasing tension I didn't know I still carried. So it's over. Marion looked up. Legally, yes, but you'll need to decide what you want to do next. Press charges, civil suit. Or just walk away. I looked at the window. Outside, the sky was clean and pale. I thought of David's face in the doorway, the way he'd looked when I threw the bag at him. A man realizing control was a leash that had snapped. Walking away sounds good, I said quietly. Marion smiled, soft and sad. You deserve peace, Elaine. On her desk sat the recorder, the one that had captured my drive that night. She'd made copies, cataloged everything. But this one she returned to me. It's yours, she said. You should keep it. I picked it up carefully. It was small, almost weightless, but it felt heavy with everything I'd survived. That evening at the small apartment I'd rented across town, I finally played it again. My voice filled the room, trembling at first, then steadying. My name is Elaine Marks. My husband, David Marks, has been recording me without consent. I'm not sick. I'm scared. For a moment, I listened as though it were someone else speaking, a woman half broken, half brave. Then I realized that's who I'd been all along. I closed my eyes, letting the sound wash through me. There were still aftershocks, panic when I heard footsteps behind me, hesitation before checking my phone, distrust of silence. Healing wasn't instant, but the difference was that the silence now belonged to me. I walked to the balcony. The city was alive below, sirens far away, laughter from an open bar, the steady hum of night. For once, it didn't feel threatening. It felt real. I pressed the recorder's button again, speaking softly into it, not as evidence, but as affirmation. Day 31. I'm free. My voice is mine again. I let the words linger, then stopped the recording. The apartment felt different, then warmer, grounded. I brewed tea, something David never liked because it smelled messy, and watched steam rise in slow curls. I wondered where Lydia was, whether she'd found her own version of truth. Part of me still hoped she would call one day, not to apologize, but to start again. I didn't hate David anymore. Hatred meant he still occupied space in my head. Now there was only distance, vast, quiet, absolute. Before bed, I placed the recorder on the nightstand beside my phone. Not out of fear, but as a reminder, it was never the device that haunted me, it was who held it. And now, it was mine. As I lay down, I thought of that night, of the storm, of the woman whispering, "I'm not crazy," into the dark. She had no idea that voice would one day save her. The rain began again, faintly far away, a soft percussion on the roof. It didn't sound like warning this time. It sounded like applause.